You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Well, PPI came out today and it's raging at over 8%, 8.5% if memory serves me correct. And experts are surprised. But my next guest, Matthew Johnson, and I, well, we're not surprised, that's for sure. We're only surprised it didn't go higher. Hey, Matthew, welcome back to the show. So why should anybody be surprised by these inflation numbers?
Well, I think that we're an optimistic bunch, right, Kerry? And thanks for having me on today. It's good to be with you again. We're an optimistic bunch, right? We have a lot of optimism that things are going to progress in a direction that we want them to progress to. And, you know, let's face it, we don't like the pain. We don't like to see the thrashing of the economy. We're not dumb bunnies. We know that the interest rates going up by the feds has a negative implication on our economy. And so, you know, we want the pain to stop. We want to stop seeing what we're seeing right now. However, you're absolutely correct. It didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise you. It hasn't surprised a lot of people that are more, I believe, in tune and realistic about the side effects of the Fed's raising interest rates. You know, I teach my clients when I'm sitting down with them, oftentimes in stories. And so I think it's important to kind of think about, you know, Ford. Think about Ford, think about the offshoot Lincoln. Back in 1976, Lincoln came out with the Lincoln Continental Mark V. And that was, to date, at that time, it was the heaviest car that they had ever created. It weighed over 5,000 pounds. And, you know, when we think about our economy is very much like that big, heavy car. And it has a lot of mass. And in 2020, when we shut down the economy, we severely disrupt the economy. We severely disrupt the supply chain. And so it's kind of like that car is now in the middle of our residential street and it's stalled. And that's not good for anyone. You know, you can't conduct normal business. The car's not moving. It's blocking up traffic and growth. And so, you know, the government wants to do the right thing, right? So they get behind the car and they start pushing the car. They start printing a bunch of money. They start infusing it into the economy, creating, you know, quantitative easing and liquidity. So there's an abundance of cash, but that's not enough. You can't incentivize a person to spend money just simply because there's an abundance of money in the economy. You have to go further than that. So what did they do? Well, they lowered interest rates. And so now if there's an abundance of cash and interest rates are cheap, now you can incentivize more easily that person to borrow the money. If they're borrowing the money, then consequently, they're going to somehow spend that money. And that's what gets that car moving. Well, that's good. That's great news. We want the car to move. But the problem is that when we let those things go on too long, eventually you see that the car is picking up momentum. Now it's kind of going down a hill, right? And it's getting faster and faster. And if it goes too fast, well, that's not good for anyone either. We remember the 80s and 90s. We don't want a repeat of that. And so they're trying to pump the brakes. And as it were, in my mind, they're jumping in front of the car now. And you can imagine everyone dogpiling on the front of the car. They're trying to slow it down. They're trying to, you know, get it to a reasonable speed. And the heels of their shoes are on fire right now. They're pushing so hard. And yet the car is still continuing to move. So when we think about a body in motion remains in motion, that's exactly what we're seeing. And I think our expectations are very misplaced if we think that we're going to be able to slow this inflation, turn this economy around quickly. It's got too much mass. It's got too much size. But we're still kind of on the tailwinds of what we created by infusing all of the cheap money into the economy and doing what we did. So again, it's not a big surprise. I'm not at all surprised that it went up the way that it did. And as you said, I'm actually surprised it didn't go up actually a little bit more than it did. But it is what it is.
Yes, that is true. So, and it's like turning around the battleship. Basically, takes time. These inflationary cycles can go on for decades. And to think that the Fed will snap its fingers and bring it to heel really is unrealistic. And the main driver of the inflation that we're having, obviously, the Fed's behind it with ultra low subsidized interest rates, artificially low interest rates. But there's also a fiscal component. The U.S. is spending more money than it's taking in taxes and printing the difference. And the Fed's becoming the facilitator of a reckless fiscal policy, and nobody seems to have any interest in bringing that under control. This administration or the prior five, nobody really cares about balancing a budget, living within your means. But as individuals, we know there are limits to how much you can borrow and how much you can cut spending, all that. But you have constraints. But government itself has no constraints in the current environment.
I agree. And I think that there's another component here. I also believe that it's potentially misplaced to think that raising interest rates is going to slow inflation, when in reality, raising interest rates, Carrie, actually exacerbates inflation. Let me give you an example. When you think about what's happening to the small business owner, when you think about what's happening even to big business owners, on one hand, as an employer, and I have 8 employees. When I have those employees, I want to take care of them. They take care of my clients. They take care of me, and so I want to take care of them. But their cost of living is going up. So what do you think that they're hoping for? They're hoping for a pay raise, right? So I want to take care of them. I want to give them a pay raise because I think that they deserve it, and I don't want their family to suffer. But at the same time, what is happening to my expenses as the business? What's happening to my costs are going up. And I think we need to understand that when we look at what's happening economically, why do we have what we have going on today? We have going on what we have today because we have a lack of investment in infrastructure. So we don't have a demand problem. We have a supply problem. And here's the issue with that. When you have a supply problem, you need capacity. Well, how do you get capacity? Well, to get capacity, you have to build. In order to build, you have to borrow. But now borrowing is more expensive than ever before. So we can point fingers to all the various corporations in America, and we can say, you know what, we need more microchips. We need more oil. We need more of anything. But there is a hesitation on the side of those corporations in many respects because they're seeing their costs going up. They're seeing their wages going up. They're seeing that taxes are going up. And so you see, it's a double-edged sword. And so we have to be very careful to consider that in many respects, I believe that the Federal Reserve is focusing more on the symptoms than what they're focusing on the ailment. But as you said, it seems as though everyone wants to ignore that. And Congress kind of expects that no big deal. We've got checks in the checkbook, so that must mean we have money in the bank. We can keep writing those checks and don't worry about it. We'll just go ahead and tax people later. And we should be concerned about taxes, right? We should be concerned about taxes and taking advantage of the low tax rates that we have right now to set ourselves up to protect ourselves down the road from higher taxes.
And basically what I always say is the cure that the Fed and the government are putting forth really is the disease. Not worse than the disease. It is the disease. It's what's bringing everything down. But to reverse course now and end inflationary policies, both on the monetary and the fiscal fronts, would throw the world into a major depression.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Goldterra Resource Corp is a gold exploration company that has assembled a highly prospective district-scale land position on the doorstep of the city of Yellowknife in Canada's Northwest Territories. Goldterra is currently focused on expanding and delineating gold resources at the company's Yellowknife City Gold Project, with a goal of discovering over 5 million ounces. With ready access to infrastructure and multiple high-grade gold discoveries, Goldterra is on track to re-establishing Yellowknife as one of the premier gold mining districts in Canada. Goldterra trades as YGT in Toronto and YGTFF on the OTC. For more information, go to goldterracorp.com. That's goldterracorp.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
I agree. There is so many different, there's so many concerns that people have today. As a fiduciary working with people every single day, the number one fear, Carrie, is no longer that of the fear of dying. It's the fear of running out of money before you die. And what's going on right now is only exacerbating the fear in America. And we have the monetary side that we see unfolding before our eyes. We also see the psychological impact that it's taking on American families. Earlier this week, I was talking to a couple that are clients of mine, and back in 2021, they had finally decided that they were old enough. They needed to move to a ranch-style home. They no longer could, travel up and down the stairs like they could, when they were younger. And so they put their house up for sale. And in 2021, they had a bid, and they thought they were going to easily sell their home. And because interest rates have slowly gone up on mortgages, the first house sale it fell through. And so they went ahead and they put it back on the market, and they got a second bid, and they thought they were going to sell the house, and that fell through. And in the interim of time, they had already purchased another home. And to exacerbate that problem, the banker had convinced them in October of 2021 not to renew their HELOC that was at 3%. He said, interest rates are going to stay low. Don't worry about that. And now that same HELOC, just to kind of float the boat and to get them to a point where they don't have two mortgages at the same time, they're going to have to renew that HELOC now at 6%. This means the same piece of property now is costing twice the amount of monthly payment. And this is hitting people right where their pocketbook is. And so do we see an end in sight? Well, you and I both know that it will eventually end. But for the time being, it's going to be extremely painful, and it's going to continue to be this way for quite some time. It's just not going to turn around overnight.
Hey, so what's the solution here? What are you telling your clients to do in light of these very uncertain, volatile times where, for the past, since the financial collapse, 08 and 09, you went into the stock market, it was guaranteed double-digit return for a decade. And now that's not the case.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you asked the question, because there is a lot of meaningful things that we can be doing. So I'm going to hit it from a couple of different standpoints. The first is, let's go back to taxes for just a moment. So we need to understand that we have the ability of doing Roth conversions. And we know about Roth conversions maybe from a peripheral standpoint, but people don't understand that there is some really ideal times to do Roth conversions. And now would be one of those times. So the majority of money that I see that people have is going to be pre-tax. It could be coming out of 401ks, 403bs, traditional IRAs. That's kind of the majority, because over the course of time, the government has conditioned us to believe that, it's better if we get taxed on the crop than on the seed, right? So what they've done is they've given us the opportunity to do a Roth conversion, where we take money out of our IRAs or pre-tax accounts and move them into those Roth accounts. And we know that the benefit of the Roth account is that it has tax-free growth. We also know that we're in a fairly low tax rate environment right now, at least for the next few years. And so what this is going to give us the opportunity to do is take advantage of these depressed prices. If we have stocks that we have in our portfolio and we like these stocks, and especially if they're dividend paying stocks, which I advocate for, you know that they're maybe down by 15%, 20%, 25% or more. Take advantage of journaling and moving those positions from the IRA or even that 401k pre-tax side to the Roth side. Eventually, I believe that the market will come back, but it's going to take some time. And if you can do that Roth conversion, and you can do it the right way by having the money in the bank to pay the taxes, and I know that that's more easily said than done for a lot of folks, but if you can do that, now you can take advantage of these prices while they're down. You can consequently move more shares or more positions into that Roth. And then as things improve and come back, now look at all the exponential growth that you have in that Roth. And that is a blessing. That is a benefit. Is there some pros and cons to it? Of course there is. There's always details that we have to be mindful of, but it's something that we should be looking at. Number two, it is absolutely impossible to ignore the benefits of fixed income. Most people, when I use the word fixed income, Carrie, they think of bond funds, okay? And granted, that has been conditioned to be the definition of fixed income. But when I talk about fixed income to my clients, I'm talking real individual contracts, things like individual bonds, individual preferreds. And here's the thing, those instruments are a contract, and those instruments have what's called a par value. And so what this means is that if bonds were selling at $1,000 and now bonds are selling at $800, I'm buying them at a discount to their par value. I can buy more of them. Every single one of those instruments, subject to default, is going to pay me a wonderful steady stream of contractual interest or dividends. And guess what? Because I paid less for that instrument, I'm going to be getting a higher yield. A 5% paying bond that pays $50, but that's purchased at $800 is now yielding 6.25%. Now, is that 8.5? Is it beating inflation? Heavens no. But is it doing better than many other instruments, stocks that are just simply stocks going down in value, or say CDs or money market funds? Those things are contractual in nature that pay us an income. And consequently, when they mature, if I bought them at, say, $800 and now they mature at $1,000, that's a 25% capital gain in my pocket. So it's hard to ignore fixed income, but you need to be working with someone who knows how to do individual fixed income instruments. Bond funds are being whipped 6 ways from Sunday, just like many equity stock funds. And so we need to understand we have alternatives to those funds. Thirdly, I think if we have the cash, if we have the resources to be able to dial our sights in on good quality blue chips, individual stocks. Remember that growth stocks don't do well in a rising interest rate environment. Value stocks tend to do better. But if we have our sights and we have the cash and the ability of being able to dollar cost average, don't get greedy, because the Feds aren't going to stop raising interest rates tomorrow. This is going to continue on into 2023. Use this as an opportunity to be able to nibble and to add to your portfolio of good quality companies that you know are going to be cash flowing. They're going to pay good dividends. And don't settle for the 1.3s. Please realize that there's companies out there that are down and they're paying dividends of 3.5%, 4%, 4.5%, even as much as 5%. That's meaningful. You need income during a high inflationary environment. Get instruments that are going to be able to pay you a good dividend cash flow.
All right. I like the concept. I know you listening out there are going to want to know more. Matthew, how do we find you? How do we connect with you on the web?
Very easy. You can go to my website, Johnson, JOHNSON, WIM as in wealth, income management.com.
All right. Excellent. Hey, if you got a question for Matthew, you can shoot us an email, a question for us as well. The email address is kl@kerrylutz.com, and you will find Matthew's link to his site in the show notes of this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And make sure you sign up for your free newsletter. Matthew, always interesting, compelling conversation, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.